As the violence escalates in the Middle East, voters go to the polls in the state of Connecticut in what is widely seen as a referendum in the war on terror. Senator Joe Lieberman facing stiff challenge from an anti-war candidate by the name of Ned Lamont. Lieberman's lost a lot of support because he supported democracy in Iraq. And if he loses, is that a bad sign for other candidates who support democracy in the Middle East? Will this issue drive moderate Dems to the left? Connecticut Senator Christopher Dodd, the other senator, a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, a supporter of Joe Lieberman, joins us now. Good to see you, Senator. You've been campaigning for Joe Lieberman. Why?
Well, because he's a good senator, he's a good man, and he's a good Democrat. And he votes against the Bush administration about 90% of the time. He has been a very effective member of the Senate on behalf of Connecticut and the country, any number of issues I can think of, from transportation and health care, as well as jobs here in the state of Connecticut. Joe's been a good colleague. He and I disagree on the war, but that's no reason to be against Joe Lieberman. He's been a terrific member of Congress for 18 years. It was a wonderful Attorney General in our state for years before that. He has a wonderful record as a public servant. He cares about public policy, and I hope people in Connecticut today will get out, who are Democrats, get out and support him.
Lamont has done well, Senator, because of his rather strident anti-war rhetoric. If that succeeds and more Democrats embrace that position, is it possible that Democrats could become the sort of modern-day George McGovern, who got really creamed politically for his anti-war stance?
Well, I would disagree with your premise. In fact, the most recent poll done 24 hours ago in the state of Connecticut indicated that a majority, close to 60% of the people voting for Ned Lamont, were voting for him for reasons other than the war in Iraq. I think the primary reason here is against the Bush administration and Republican leadership in Congress, and they have unfairly, in my view, tarred Joe Lieberman as being a part of that. But the real hostility in Connecticut, not just among Democrats, but among independents, unaffiliated voters, as well as many Republicans, is a disappointment about this administration's leadership at both domestic and foreign policy.
Right.
That is really at the root of all of this, and then linking Joe Lieberman up with that, which is unfair, in my view.
Senator, you know, obviously on the right-hand side of the screen, as you and I are talking, we're watching the war that Israel is waging against Hezbollah, a terrorist group supported by Iran in Syria, part of the larger war on terror. Right. By opposing the war in Iraq, are you concerned that Lamont and other members of your party will get branded as soft on terror and weak on security?
I don't think so. In fact, many argue with the fact that the war here is actually probably exacerbating the problem on terror in many, many ways. Our troops there, who are doing a wonderful job, are now in sort of a shooting gallery. They're becoming a referee in a civil war in Iraq. Today it's now the Shia versus the Sunni, and I think it's terribly wrong to keep our soldiers in a position where they have to literally try and separate these people. The Iraqi people have been given an incredible opportunity. We've lost 2,500 of our best and brightest. We have 18,000 seriously injured. The Iraqis themselves now have to decide politically whether or not they can put aside their sectarian differences and build a country. That's really up to them. There isn't a treasury deep enough or enough soldiers, in my view, to stop that from happening if they don't want it to happen.
Senator, many thanks. Good to see you. On the right-hand side of your screen, Israeli howitzers stand ready to target terrorists near the Lebanese border. On the left, a political newcomer who may today use his successful anti-war message to knock off a three-term Democratic senator out of Connecticut. Joe Lieberman's longtime colleague, Senator Chris Dodd, was here just moments ago on Fox News Live. He doesn't think this election is a referendum on the war.
I think the primary reason here is against the Bush administration and Republican leadership in Congress, and they have unfairly, in my view, tarred Joe Lieberman as being a part of that. But the real hostility in Connecticut, not just among Democrats, but among independents, unaffiliated voters, as well as many Republicans, is a disappointment about this administration's leadership at both domestic and foreign policy.
Jan Barron is a former general counsel for the Republican National Committee, and Marianne Marsh is a Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor. Good to see you both. Notwithstanding what the senator just said, it does seem to us and our reporters there that, you know, the anti-war stance of the candidate Ned Lamont has really dominated this. Marianne, here's how the New York Post assessed the impact of today's election. Let me read to you what they wrote in their op-ed. A Lamont victory would likely send even more Democratic polls scurrying for cover on Iraq and signal a far-left takeover of the party on the scale of the George McGovern debacle in '72. Is that about right?
That's about wrong, Greg. I mean, the fact is here, this race is a warning signal to every incumbent up for re-election in 2006. And that's really bad news for Republicans, because there are more Republican incumbents up for re-election this year, and they all support staying the course in Iraq at a time when most Americans now think the war is the wrong war at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, run the wrong way by George Bush and the Republicans. And all you have to do, Greg,
and supported, by the way, initially by a lot of Democrats. So, I mean, there's the rub. I don't want to go too long. I want to give Jan an opportunity. You know, Jan, there is a joke going around that Cindy Sheehan will be Lamont's chief of staff if he wins. I mean, is the GOP sort of secretly pulling for Lamont because he may symbolize this sort of terminal political illness called McGovernism that could infect the Democratic Party?
I think there are Republicans who kind of are taking some perverse pleasure in what's going on here, but I think that what we're witnessing in Connecticut really is a political version of a religious inquisition. And we've had that in our party just 2 years ago in Pennsylvania with Senator Specter. And what's common in both of these types of primaries is a perceived heretic who's being called to account by the respective political parties' base. And what we also see in these types of races is that the heretic, or the so-called heretic, basically runs on a platform, oh, you've got me wrong. I'm really not that much out of line with the conventional wisdom of the party.
Marianne, as we watch Israel on the right-hand side of the screen battle a terrorist group that's taken over Lebanon with the support of two terror-sponsing nations, Iran and Syria, really, might the midterm elections become, in a way, a referendum on the war on terror, and does Lamont's virulent anti-war campaign message send another message to voters that Democrats may be soft on terror?
Well, it is a referendum, and it's a referendum on how this war was waged. You just talked to Senator Chafee in Rhode Island, a Republican, Santorum in Pennsylvania, Kennedy in Minnesota, DeWine in Ohio. They're all Republicans. They're all up for re-election. They all support continuing the course in Iraq, and they're all in trouble. So that's why, at the end of the day, no matter who wins in Connecticut today, the Democrats will hold on to that seat. Yeah. You can't say that about an awful lot of Republican senators who are in the fight of their life because they're standing by George Bush and how he waged this war in Iraq and on a terror, and he's failed at both. All
right, last question, Jan. Lieberman has cut the gap substantially in the last few days. I mean, if he wins today as a moderate who supports the war, supports President Bush, what does that do to Democrats and many of their anti-war activists?
Well, it puts the Democrats back in the same position they were in the 2002 election, the 2004 election, which is that it shows that you can't simply cut and run away from the war against terror. You may criticize the administration on the way that they're conducting the war, but you can't basically take a position of, gosh, we ought to just pull out, we ought to give up in the Middle East, we shouldn't stay in Iraq, we shouldn't be helping out the Israelis and so forth.
Jan Barron, Marianne Marsh,
right.
Thank you both. Good to see you.
Thank you, Greg.
A UN ceasefire deal could be on the way right now, but that isn't causing either side of the war to back down. It looks like Lebanon and Israel are trying to get in their last licks. Coming up, fair and balanced coverage from both sides of the battlefield.